Guys, you're looking at software called E-Sword or E-Sword.com. It's called the Sword of the Lord with an electronic edge, and it's a superior search engine in both the Hebrew and Greek. You can take any version you want. Here I'm using the King James version, and go into the Old Testament or New Testament. And for instance, you've got King James and you've got King James Version Plus. When you do that, you're going to see a series of numbers and these purple letters come up, and the H's means that it was written in Hebrew. If you go into the New Testament with the software, it will say G for Greek, and some of it was written in Aramaic, but it will give you the spelling, the real meaning. It's a very useful tool. You can also search for words in the Bible and all the chapters that they're in. Very useful, and it's free. I think they have a more advanced version, and you get a CD with it if you want to kind of donate to their project. But I've used it for years, and I've used it in probably 100 videos. Now, I think we're in the final chapter of mankind, and this is the last chapter of the Old Testament, and there's only 4 books. I'm going to just touch on it, but I want you to read all 4 books. It's very short, and a lot of people will have an entire library of books that they've read, but they never read the one letter from God, which is the only one that's worth reading. And most of all the classic literature and things like that were actually taken from stories in the Bible. And I want to shout out to Roy Potter, because he touched on Malachi 3 this morning, and he was talking about 2 words. And they were both son, S-O-N and S-U-N, and we'll go over that here. And Roy did an excellent job because he went into the actual Hebrew of the meanings. You've got the sun as in the Son of God, and then you've got the sun as in Helios, the sun you see in the sky. We're going to talk about both of those here before we go into the first chapter of the New Testament. We'll go from Malachi right into Matthew, but the Malachi is like the revelation, or part of the revelation of the New Testament. So we're really looking at the end chapter of both the Old and New. And so let's look at this, Malachi 3:1. Again, read it the whole 4 chapters. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom you delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of the host. And that's our Lord, Emmanuel, God with us. But who may abide in that day of his coming? Who can stand before him? Who shall stand, it says, and who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Now, of course, guys, the sons of Levi was the first Levitical priesthood set up. It says, then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, and as in former years. And I will come near to you judgment. And I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers. Who is that? Think pharmacia. Think vaccines, and against the adulterers, and against false swearers, against those that oppress the hireling in his wages. No, you can't work. You've got to stay home. The widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Lord of the host. That's what's going to happen. On this day, it says, again, that day when Christ comes, it will be a great fire, it will be a great heat, and that's what the Bible says. It's how it will end. It won't be in a flood. But guys, this is very important, so pay attention. And when I say the last chapter of the Old Testament, Malachi is very short. You can see there's only 6 lines in chapter 4, called the Great Day of the Lord, and that's how it ends, and that's how this world is going to change, and it looks like it's going to happen sooner than later. Malachi 4:1, it says, for behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven. A day that shall burn as an oven. Guys, you know that a day with the Lord is 1,000 years with man. Just something to think about. And so what happens during 1,000 years at the end of the New Testament? It's the millennium, when evil is locked away, and we're taught for 1,000 years by Emmanuel, God with us. But again, for behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And that day shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. That's these people, this new world order. When it says neither root nor branch, there will be none left of the Kenites. No children, no grandfathers, nothing. Nothing will be left. And the word is fine, finished. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. That line says so much, and we're going to have to stop and take a look at it. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son. Now, guys, this is spelled S-U-N, okay? Not S-O-N. And if you click on the King James Plus button right here, and Roy talked about this and did an excellent job. He is really way more in depth on the original languages than I am, guys. But if you click on this King James version, you'll see that it wasn't a typo about the sun. Right here, you just click on or hover over the purple number of sun, and it's Shemesh, from an unused root meaning to be brilliant. The sun, by implication the east, figuratively a ray, that is actually a notch battlement eastward. It's the sun. Some call it a star in the Shemesh, but the word S-O-N has nothing to do with this. And Shemesh and the sun, when you look at this, in H1 1053, it says Helios, like your heliosphere of the sun. But let me click off those numbers because it's kind of hard to read. You can do that, but it says, but unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. This healing rays of the physical sun, Helios, is what Satan does not want us to have, because it's going to burn the Kenites and the unrighteous and the leaders of the vaccines, pharmacy, sorcery. But when this happens, and think about in Revelation, the angel pours his vial upon the sun, and the beast's kingdom is cast into darkness. We've talked about it for years. And Roy and I have talked about this also. It says, and so what we're dealing with here, guys, is something happens on the sun. For the evil, it's not good. For God's children, it is good. It's a healing. And he says, and you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. Guys, where are stalls usually? They're in a barn, right? At the end, we're going to go to Matthew 13. It says, gather the tares first to be burned. Then gather the wheat and put them in my barn. Is that going to be for that 1,000 years? Because as we read the rest of this, maybe it will be more clear. And you shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, saith the Lord of hosts. Ashes. Now, if we're going to go to the parable of the tares in Matthew, but the ashes that are left here come after the angels of God. And we talked about 20,000 chariots of fire that will darken the sky. They're so big and there's so many. But they will be sent to the four corners, and God's people will be gathered for the stall, for the barn of protection, while the earth is scorched. Remember ye the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all of Israel, with statutes and judgments. Behold, I will send Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. That's telling you that there's a good chance, we don't know for sure, that Elijah will be one of the two prophets. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Why? What is happening? It says in the end days, love will wax cold between the families, between friends and brothers and sisters and fathers and sons and daughters and mothers and grandparents. It will wax cold. And that's exactly what the Luciferian order wants. Isolate you. Keep you out of contact with your family. Don't go visit anyone. Stay out of the sun. They're freaking out in California because the people are piling onto the beaches. And so Elijah, one of the messages will be to turn that cold, hard heart that will wax cold back warm again, because that will be one of the things that will be necessary for you to have your eyes open and your hearts right with your family and friends to accept what is coming in the true word. Now, moving out of that last book of the Old Testament straight into the first one of the New. It talks about the parable of the sword. This is very important about the barn and the stall and where God's people will be. Matthew 13:1, the same day went Jesus out of the house and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And he will explain why he is talking in parables here in just a moment. But again, behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell into good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Now, this is very important. And this good ground, guys, is the bloodline. The Kenites don't understand this. Christ does not want them to understand this, because they are not going to be gathered into the barn or the stall of the Lord. They're going to be gathered together and tied in bundles for the fire. And it's very interesting how this tying and gathering together of the tares happens. But when it says, fell onto good ground and it brought forth fruit, guys, because the children of God listen to the word. That's good ground, the children of God. And it brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60, 30. Why? Because if you understand the Word of God and you're starting to learn more and more about it, or you've known it for a long time, and you do not share it, you're putting that candle under that bushel, and that light will be extinguished out, because it is useless. Even if you don't, you can bring forth hundreds or 60 or 30 people to the true word of the Lord, so they're not deceived in these end times. Those are the fruit. Those are the sacrifices that he wants. And the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? And he answered and he said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. What is it that you have? It is that you're a son of God. You're not a Kenite, a son of Satan. If you don't understand what happened in the Garden of Eden, just as Pastor Murray used to talk about, just put it on the shelf, think about it. And he said, Therefore I speak to them in parables, because they see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, By hearing you shall hear, and shall not understand. And seeing you shall see, and shall not perceive. This good ground is the children of God, not the Kenites. It says, for the people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. And this last chapter of this section, or this last line of this section says, but for verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which you see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which you hear, and have not heard them. Guys, do you realize that this generation now is one of the generations he's talking about? Probably the last one in this situation. And he's exactly right. The prophets and righteous men for thousands of years have wondered about the mysteries of God. And now they're starting to happen. Now, let's go, and we're going to cover a few more of these lines in this chapter, but I want you to read the entire chapter of Matthew 13. It says, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, and guys, these parables were the same, in different words and different approaches, to where he knew that the Kenites would never understand this, the sorcerers. But this is his way of giving people a chance to look at the same subject from a different direction that may be better for them for understanding. But this is very key here, 13:24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field, but while the men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. Guys, the man which sowed good seed in his field, that God created paradise, and he put Adam and Eve there. But the enemy came and sowed tares. Guys, again, if you don't understand the difference in the lineage between Cain and Abel, we'll have to do another video on that. But the enemy came, and there were two born. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the first tare was Cain. His father was Satan. And there comes the Kenite bloodline, which means sons of Cain. Christ called them, you are sons of the serpent. Remember that? And the tare, he was the first tare. Cain was. You had the wheat of Abel and the tare of Cain. But he says, then the tares also. So we're talking about going from that day until now. And both the sons of God, the children of God, the daughters of God, and the Kenites have both grown and filled the field of the earth. So the servants of the household came and said unto him, Sir, didn't thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath the tares come? He said unto them, an enemy has done this. Who is your enemy? The servant said unto him, wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? Who are these servants? They're the angels. They're the messengers. They're the ones that have the chariots of fire that are coming to gather up from the four corners of the world. The servant said again to him, will thou then we go and gather them up? And he said, nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. In other words, if you do something destructive and they're all grown together, then it's going to destroy the good and the bad, my children and Satan's children. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first, not last. Who goes first? The tares. And bind them into bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Remember the last book in the Old Testament, Malachi? They will be protected in that stall. Gather them into my barn. And guys, will that barn be that during the 1,000 years of millennium, and after the tares are gathered, and they're bound together to burn them. It didn't say they were bound and burned before the wheat was gathered into the barn. It said they were bound into bundles to burn them. So this gathering together, first the tares and the bind, and bind them into bundles, how does that occur, guys? I want you to think about this. What they're talking about is Christ said, if you see him in the desert or whoever's claiming to be the Messiah, don't go there. These first ones coming, that's not me. You will see these come first. And so you're going to see people crowd, for instance, into the desert, the mega churches, the mega areas to worship the Antichrist and the beast and the Luciferian doctrine. It goes on to say that all things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them, that he might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet again, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, and I will utter things which have been kept from secret from the foundation of the world. Think about that. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. Now he wanted them to know. He had picked them. He knew who they were. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. So that tells you right there. There it is. Like I said, he repeated these parables in different directions, but here it is. If you don't understand this, if you cannot understand what happened in the beginning, you will not understand what happened in the end. And guys, if you want to know and you don't understand, don't be on the side that will never understand. You better dig into this. He said, the enemy that sowed them is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. And therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. He will not flood it, it will be burned. An angel will pour his vial out upon the sun. The Son of Man, now this Son is not S-U-N. Let's take a look. And again, I've got to shout out to Roy Potter for doing such a great job of this in Malachi, the same subject earlier this morning. But if we click on the King James Plus tab at the top left of your software, these numbers will come up. And so here within 1, 2, 3 verses, we have both sons, S-O-N and S-U-N. And then if we look at Matthew 13:41, the Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity. Guys, what does that mean? Who goes first? This Son is, if you hover over the G5207, let me pull this down where the whole thing can get in. Again, that will give you the Greek word 5207. If you click there, it's a primary word, a son. Sometimes of animals used very widely, intermediate, remote, or figurative kinship. Child, foal, or son, a human. Then, if you go just below this, and it says, send forth his angels, they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, the tares, okay, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There should be wailing and gnashing of teeth. This furnace of fire, guys, will be this planet. And the reason I say that is, remember in Malachi, my people will tread upon the ashes, but you won't be right in this plane. You won't be here. You're going to be gathered together and put into that barn, that protection. When that's over with, you will tread upon the ashes. It says, then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun. Here, just same section, but this sun is different. Helios, a ray perhaps akin to the alternate G138. The sun, by implication, light from the east of the sun. So you've got the Son of Man, you've got Helios, and this Helios is going to put forth a healing ray. They don't want you in the sun right now. Does that tie in with anything, guys, that we're thinking about now? And that healing ray of the sun and the devastation that it will cause the Kenites, the tares. Guys, this is just something I want you to think about, because we're seeing food shortages and we're seeing food processing plants destroyed. taken down, bankrupt. We're seeing milk being poured out. We're seeing vegetation plowed under. And at the same time, the beef industry is being told to euthanize all the cattle. They're starting to ship in beef, which is very poor quality, from Asia, that can be controlled very easily, cut off once they destroy our natural food supplies. And so this message is that we overcome, we win. God's telling these pharmacies, these sorcerers, your days are numbered. I'm going to come. I'm going to gather my people. Then there's going to be this day of the Lord, this burning fire. Then my people will walk in those ashes. They will tread them underfoot. We win, guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.